Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on a classic. This is a Daiwa BG or Black Gold 30. It's the first in a series of the BGs. It's one that's got a fantastic reputation as a 3-ball bearing reel that is just ready to go fishing. And well, it's a durable, rugged reel that's just quite honestly hard to beat. We're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, how to clean it up and get it ready to continue providing a lot of fun fishing for years to come. A couple of things to note on this reel is you have a wooden handle, so if you're looking at that handle knob on a BG, notice that the first one is kind of the one that has that series. I think shortly after that those handles became the use of that wood became prohibited, so they switched over to the plastic handles. Well, we're going to take the reel apart completely. We'll start by taking off the exterior pieces. I always like to check the non-handle side on the Daiwas. Sometimes they have a through shaft that's connected with a screw here. In this case, it's not. So we'll just cover that back up and we'll go take this reel's handle off by turning it in the opposite direction of the crank. So if you're cranking in a counterclockwise manner, you want to remove this in a clockwise manner. And as I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. If you do subscribe to my channel, please use that notification button. That notification button will let you know when I'm posting the videos. And well, you'll see all kinds of fishing reels serviced on this. And the goal is to teach you how to do it yourself, whether it's a good size. This is probably a 50 size reel, even though it's a BG30. Kind of odd numbering process with this early set of reels, but they may be saltwater, they may be heavy duty, they may be freshwater pond reels, it could be bassing reels. We never know what comes into my shop, and well, you're getting an opportunity to see what comes into my shop for service and to learn from that servicing how to do it yourself. That's the goal of this channel, and if you like that, I want to just encourage you to subscribe. And again, if you do subscribe, please use that notification button. Okay, well, we're just removing these 3 side plate screws. That's going to hold the gearing underneath. This reel is in excellent condition. This is sent in by John. It's a beautiful reel, and he just wants to keep it fishing for a long time to come. He has converted this over to braid. Braided line is okay on this reel. You just need to be aware when you're using braided line on the older reels, 2 things. The first is you need to make sure that you back the braided line with monofilament because a lot of these older spools are not set up for that. They don't have rubber bands or other types of things there that are going to stop it. And then the other thing you want to make sure is just periodically check, particularly your line roller. Sometimes the abrasive braided material will cut into that line guide because that was not designed in the era of braid. So sometimes it's a softer metal, and that softer metal does get cut into by the aggressive braid. All right, metal case, the side plate comes off. We have a ball bearing. I'm going to oil that ball bearing. Now, I tested beforehand. All of these bearings seem to be working fine. I'm going to set all of the pieces and parts that I take off into a parts tray. I use the bottom of a fast food container, but it helps me to organize where they are, and well, when it comes time to reinstall, I'll know exactly where they are. This uses a crosswind arm and a kind of a sleeve to it that is offset so that you get a oscillation going to it. Now the arm usually can come up off and out of this. There we go. Take a picture. Now this one seems symmetrical, so I would say it doesn't matter what side it's on. There is a more polished side, and that was facing down. So you need to note these as you go about servicing reels, what the position of the pieces and parts are, and well, how they go back together again. There was a shim washer that sits on top of that crosswind arm assembly. We're going to remove the axle shaft now by removing the screw in the crosswind block. Take a picture here. You want to notice a couple of things. One of them is that the the stud on this crosswind block is to the left. Now, in this case, it might be hard to put it in reverse there, but it's not hard up here at all, right? If you decided you were going to put it this way inside the block on a reinstall, like that, well, you're going to bump the bottom and it's not going to work. So you need to make sure you take pictures along the way. Mental images are good, but, well, it's hard to trust your mind from time to time. So just take the picture. That will help you with a quick reassembly. All right, well, we pulled the spool and the axle shaft off. We're going to serve the spool later, but you can remove the axle shaft simply by removing the drag adjuster, and that's your axle shaft. I'll put that into the tray and then remove the main gear as well. Now we pull the main gear out. We have the same thing on the back end of this. If you didn't test it before, do this. Spin it. If you feel that it's spinning nice and smooth, by trapping that in your fingers, holding the inner and outer race. Spin it. If you hear any noises, if it wobbles or anything like that, well, it's time to replace that bearing. This shows that the reel has not been serviced in a while. There is no grease at all in the channels of the main gear, and actually the grease has been thrown inside where it's accumulated and it's dirty. So that's the idea behind servicing a reel, is get the old greases and oils and dirt and debris out of there. And, well, clean it up just like that. If there is grease that is caught in the teeth, take a hard brush, pull it through. I use a paper towel underneath the main gear if I'm going to do that, so that I can pull the old grease onto the towel and not transfer it to another project. Because this has an oscillation system that's running off of this inner eccentric loop, you will not find a crosswind gear on the back side of the main gear. What you want to do next is use a fishing reel grease. In this case, I'm using a Penn fishing reel grease. And you want to reapply where that grease should be, which is in the teeth of the main gear. You want to inspect those teeth. Make sure that the teeth are all uniform, that they're not cracked or chipped or the like. You probably would have felt that when you were testing a reel, or if somebody brought a reel in and said it's just not working right. That could be a cause for that. All right, I'll put that main gear aside for a moment, and we'll come up top here and we will service the rotor. There's a tie down screw here that holds the rotor nut on. So remove that. Again, put that in a parts tray so that you don't lose it. That looks like a 12mm nut. So I'll use a deep socket 12mm tool that I have on hand, but in this case you can use an open-end wrench, or you can use a standard 12mm socket to do that. And then we will remove. You want to check this. There is an assembly under here that is the dog. You want to oil the slots and the line guide. And I tested this before. The bail is firing fine. So as long as the bail is firing fine, no further actions required. You do not need to take everything out. Take a picture here. This is your eccentric. This is your anti-reverse dog. There is a spring that comes off of the eccentric, and it goes through a slot in that anti-reverse dog. So take that picture. You want to know how that goes for reinstall. We're going to lift this assembly up. That's your eccentric assembly. That goes into the parts tray. Next up, we want to lift off the anti-reverse click ratchet. And then we have 3 screws where we can remove to get at the pinion gear. Take a picture here. These are not symmetrical clamps. One of them has a little tag on it that faces the front of the reel. Probably not hard to flip this over and get it backwards. So just make sure as you're servicing your reel that you notice these little intricacies of the reel itself. And, well, it certainly aids when it comes time to take it off. Now, you do not need to remove this anti-reverse dog to remove the pinion gear. There's no need to remove that dog at all. It is a friction-driven dog. As long as it's spinning free, and you can see it's spinning real free because it keeps getting in the way of my screwdriver here. But as long as it's turning front and back easily, there's no need to remove that. There is a spring here that controls the override. I'll give you a close-up of that in case maybe you were working on your reel and somehow that spring became dislodged. Here's your close-up. There is a hook on that spring. It goes through the hole in this carrier, and the bottom piece of that is a right angle that's planted in the hole in the case. All right, we're going to remove the carrier. I'm just going to put that right down so I know that up is up. We should be able to just pull up on that. We have a bearing. This is a 3-ball bearing reel. And we have a nice, well-made, nice quality brass, I believe it's brass, pinion gear. Now it's interesting what you find in reels these days. This is an older reel. This, as I mentioned, this is the first generation of the BG, so it's probably late 1980s. I probably should have done my homework there. But they used to use brass. Now they're using all kinds of materials. And I've found rotors that are corroded, pinion gears, sorry, not rotors, pinion gears that are corroded. I found one that was snapped. And you're sitting there thinking, well, how in the world did that happen? And what are they using for materials that caused that weakness? All right, I'll oil that bearing. I'm going to get a good amount of fishing reel grease now. We're going to grease up the teeth of the pinion gear. This does not have an automatic anti-reverse. This reel predated those, or the instant anti-reverse. It predated it. Okay, there's the pinion gear and our ball bearing. That can go on and seat in. And we're going to take our tie down. We're going to remember that that little point sits here. Go to our parts tray, which is holding these pieces. I'm going to put a little dab of grease onto my screwdriver in the hopes that it will hold it as I try to get one of these set. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. All right, we've got one started. Now, I'm not going to drive that all the way down. I'm going to just kind of snug it up, because you still have to align the other two of the screws. I think I've pretty much got good alignment there. We do. And we'll have one more that we need to put in. These are machine threads. They're not rough threads. Just make sure you tighten it down nicely. We got one more to go. A little bit more of that grease to kind of steady it for me as we put that last piece in. And just be careful as you do this. You don't want to damage or cross thread any of this. Okay, we'll tighten that one down. We'll come back to that last one that I just snugged. Make sure that that's nice and tight. Then we'll build this reel back up. We have that click ratchet that went on next. And then we had the eccentric, and I'll show you how this works once I put the eccentric on. Remember, we have that hook, and that hook goes in that slot in the carrier. So here's how it works. When you're cranking away, the pressure is pushing out and the dog is disengaged. When you go to backpedal the reel, it pulls the dog in, and that's what causes your anti-reverse. It's a proven technology that rarely fails. Okay, rotor goes on. Rotor nut goes on. And that's the 12mm nut, so tighten that up. At this point you can spin it, make sure that it spins nice and free and easy, which it does. And then find the tie down screws hole and put the tie-down screw in. I think I have enough grease left on that it's going to enable me to do that. And this tie-down screw will prevent that rotor nut from turning when you're turning your reel. If you have a lot of shake or wobble in a rotor, usually means that that nut has come loose. All right, well, we are kind of building our way back up here. So the next piece that we want is that crosswind block. A little bit of grease onto the back end of this. That's what's going to ride against the case. There's a slot here. You can put the grease in the slot where that's going to ride as well. Remember what we said, the point is to the outside, and to me it always makes sense to set this kind of down low so that you know that you have it in the right position coming across. Next up then, we've re-greased. Oh, got to put that bearing back in here. We have oiled the bearing already. Make sure that the bearing sits nicely in the case. You could put a little bit of grease onto that shaft so that it rides smooth in the inner race of that bearing. Bring that in. And now we can bring our axle shaft through the top and onto the crosswind block. Notice there's a flat side here. That flat side is going to go to the front. Bring it down and in. And then align that hole so that it's where it needs to be for the crosswind block screw. Just slid down a little bit. We'll just kind of adjust on the fly here. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, maybe you're working on one and you're a little stuck, leave those questions in the comment section. I will try to answer them for you. It doesn't have to be on this reel, it can be on any reel. Maybe you're considering buying one and you want to know the advantages of one. I just got off the phone with a fella, Eddie. He asked me about ceramic bearings. I mean, if you, whatever might be on your mind, if you want to leave that in the comment section, I will try to answer that for you. Okay, next up, we said that there's two sides. One's got a rounded or polished side, the other's a flat side. It came off with the polished side below, so that's where we're going to put it back on. That goes on to the eccentric like that. And then we mentioned we have the shim washers. This one has two. They go on next. And then the bearing sits on there. And again, we've oiled that bearing already, so we don't need to do that again. Set that on, and then we can bring the case over the top of all of that. When you put your case on, make sure you get a nice tight seal. You just heard that snap, so I know we have a nice tight seal. And we can put the 3 screws in that are going to attach the cover to the case. One of the things I get asked is, should I put Loctite on these screws? And my answer is no. They're concerned that the screw may vibrate and come loose and come out. That's a concern. Bigger concern is if you're putting Loctite on, most of the time you mean that the permanent type of Loctite, the red. And well, you may never get that screw out and be able to service that reel again. Now some of the current manufacturers are using the blue Loctite. That first turn to get it loose is kind of tough, but it does come out. But generally speaking, I do not recommend using Loctite in that situation. Okay, this is the third one. Make sure that you've got a nice tight grip on that screw as you finish that tightening. You want to make sure that it's tightened down all the way. Okay, and then the handle comes on. We've already oiled that thread, so the handle will come on. And now you attach that in the direction that the reel cranks. And you can hold that rotor as you tighten it down. There's one last step in the reel service. That's servicing the drag washers. You need a pick or a small screwdriver or something to remove the retention ring. Hold your finger on that retention ring as you go to do this so that it doesn't spring out and shoot somewhere. That's experience speaking. I've had it where it shoots out and gone somewhere. Here today, gone tomorrow. You want to notice on these washers that they're D-shaped. In other words, they're not completely circular. There is one side that's flat, and that's important when you go to reinstall. These are Teflon washers. You do not need to do anything with a Teflon washer. They're a petroleum product, and by its nature, they're self-lubricating. It's a 6-washer system. There's 3 Teflon washers, 3 metals. You start with the Teflon, one of the D-shaped washers, another Teflon. You want to make sure the Teflon washers are clean. The middle washer is an ear washer. It's got the 2 points on it, and it fits in a slot inside the spool, like that. Third Teflon washer. And again, I want to make sure that I'm close in terms of aligning that D-shaped washer with the one below it. Then we can reinstall the retention ring. Hold one side again. This is where it can shoot as well. So use your hand strength to place that in there. You may need an assist from a screwdriver, but make sure they're all in the ring. And then we can reinstall. Find your flat spot on your rotor shaft. Bring this on and over. You may need to adjust just a little bit to seat that. Push it down so that you see that the main shaft has come through all of the washers. And we can use our adjuster knob to tighten this down and check it. Tighten it all the way down, make sure it holds, and then back it off. You don't want to leave pressure on the washer. It's not necessary. And it can squeeze out greases and oils on some systems and lead to premature use and wear. I'm just going to grab a rubber band here for the line so that it doesn't trap or spin off. Okay, and now we can give it a test. Give it a nice turn. Look how nice and smooth and easy this is. Any questions as to why this reel has the reputation that it does? I don't think so. Sure your bail turns nice and free and easy? It does. And that's it. That's your service of the classic, or now I guess vintage, Daiwa BG30. It's a beautiful reel. If you had the opportunity to find and buy one, I would recommend that you go do that if you're using these reels for big size fish. They're beauties and to be treasured. I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders, our police, fire, rescue, safety workers, thank you for everything it is that you do. Your efforts are appreciated day in and day out. To everyone, enjoy the art of fishing reel repair. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you liked the video, please indicate that. And if you want to see more, of course, use that notification button. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.